So we are live on YouTube. Greetings everyone. My name is Ifra and I am a research associate at Red Lantern Analytica. I'd like to extend a hearty welcome to today's speaker, Professor Shrikant Kondapalli sir. Dr. Shrikant Kondapalli is the Dean of School of International Studies and he's also a professor. He's also a professor in Chinese studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is also an honorary fellow at Institute of Chinese Studies, Delhi, and a research associate at Center for Chinese Study, University of Stellenbosch, South Africa. We are really honored to have you with us today, sir, and in this webinar that is organized by Team Red Lantern Analytica. So, Team Red Lantern Analytica is an international affairs observer group that is based out of New Delhi, India. It focuses on critical issues that are related to China with special focus on Sino-India relations, issues of national and international security, energy and environment. The main aim of our organization is to draw in India's foremost academic institutions and security intelligentsia, corporate institutions, monetary establishments, and experts in discussion on India's foreign policy and extend the country's role in global issues. To maximize the institutional and scholarly capacity of strategic thinking in India, we are required to integrate expertise in our research in order to foster an even-minded international strategy for India. This is a young organization that is in constant search for fresh ideas and thoughts in the strategic discourse. With this goal in mind, we have set ourselves as an autonomous and a solitary international strategy think tank. We are an intellectual startup functioning with a small number of individuals who are passionate about international affairs. The today's session will be moderated by Sohil Sinha, who has completed his master's in East Asian Studies from Delhi University, and he's also a research associate at Red Lantern Analytica. I would again like to welcome you again, sir, and now I request Mr. Sinha to take over the further session.
Thank you so much, Ifra. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and our distinguished speaker. Welcome to the webinar hosted by Red Lantern Analytica on the developments in Ukraine, emerging Russia-China-Pakistan axis. Strategic balances and realities stay constant for long periods of time. Therefore, any decisive shifts that occur shape the regional and international balances for years to come. On 24th of February, Russia, under the leadership of President Vladimir Putin, had led a special military operation into Ukraine, which has culminated into what is currently known as the Ukraine crisis. However, the seeds of the crisis were sowed much before, back in November 2013, as protesters started in Kyiv against Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to reject a deal for greater economic integration with the European Union. Later, Yanukovych fled the country and Russian troops took control of the Ukrainian region of Crimea. Vladimir Putin cited the need to protect the rights of the Russian citizens and Russian speakers in Crimea and southeastern Ukraine. The crisis heightened ethnic divisions, and 2 months later, pro-Russian separatists in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of eastern Ukraine held a referendum to declare independence from Ukraine. Since then, ties between Russia and the West have estranged further. The present crisis is a continuation of the same. Russian demands of prohibiting Ukraine and NATO membership and warnings of NATO expansion to Russia's western borders were discarded, sensing a threat to its security in its own backyard. Russian troop building at Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian borders were detected, after which 3 days ago, on February 22nd, the Russian president recognized the independence of the self-declared republics of Donetsk and Luhansk and challenged Ukraine's statehood. US and the West have constantly disregarded Russia's security considerations, as a result, pushing Russia towards China. NATO's expansion in the East had even led to a joint announcement between Russian president and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, citing opposition to the same. To further understand the changing geopolitical scenario and the strategic balances in the region in view of Russia's security, and the role of the United States in the current crisis, we have ourselves distinguished speaker, Professor Srikant Kondapalli sir. Professor Kondapalli sir is an esteemed academician and one of the great minds in the fields of international relations and Chinese studies. He is the Dean of the School of International Studies at JNU. He's a frequent writer and commentator on a range of matters in the national and international media. He has numerous books authored to his name and has also received the K. Subramaniam Award, awarded by the Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis for his outstanding work on China and its armed forces. Sir, we are very grateful to have you here. To further continue this webinar, I would ask Sir to please enlighten us with what is actually going on in Ukraine at this moment.
Well, as you know, yesterday morning, the Russian troops have entered Ukraine from different places. And previously, there were the Crimean annexation that happened with over 95-96% of the people voting for joining Russia. So currently, with the two breakaway areas in the southeast of Ukraine, President Putin had supported them, and so we have now the troops in different parts of Ukraine, and also a number of casualties were reported. These are in at the moment double-digit figures of casualties because of the airstrikes, missile strikes, and the deployment of tanks across the country. So that is the situation right now. It has not yet cleared up. There was the international criticism on violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine by Russia. There is also the international criticism of the overall security situation in the Eurasian region as such. So you have also the Western European and US consolidation, the NATO related aspects. On the other hand, you have also Russia-China consolidation that has happened in the background of the military action in Ukraine. Last we heard was the number of Ukrainians have been fleeing the country because of the uncertainty in the situation, both in the capital city and in other cities as well. So this is where the situation currently lies.
Thank you so much, sir, for that expansive answer. For Russia to actually invade or send a military operation in Ukraine, how legitimate are Russian concerns in regards to the NATO expansion, and whether in trying to maintain its own hegemonic position, has US-led NATO put Europe at the brink of another great war?
Well, as you know, after the Soviet disintegration in 1991, a number of countries, including Ukraine, have become independent. And many countries after this disintegration joined the NATO. So today you have about 30 countries, and the Ukrainian president also had suggested to the membership in the NATO, which has not yet been accepted. So there has been also deployment of the NATO forces since 1999. After the 97 expansion, since 1999, the not just the membership, but also the deployment of long-range missile systems and others have been carried out by NATO, including in the East European countries. So in this background, President Putin had laid down three conditions for normalization between Russia and Europe. Number one is Ukraine should not join NATO membership, take the NATO membership, because that would threaten the Russian security interests in this region. Number two, they have also mentioned about the expansion, and he criticized the NATO expansion into other parts, generally in terms of membership as well as in terms of deployment of forces. Number three, also the neutrality that he had asked for, demanded for from the NATO partners. So these three conditions meant that the NATO has a lot to explain to the Russians in this agreement. So currently, Russia has been saying that Ukraine is violating its sovereignty and territorial integrity. So Russia says that Ukraine may possibly be scheming to counter Russia, and Russian security interests are threatened. So this is the Russian argument that the Ukrainians are a threat to them. So in this background, there is the volleys from both sides, NATO accusing Russia, Russia accusing Ukraine and the NATO. The picture, of course, is we have seen the casualties now, as well as the deployment of forces. So this is the overall picture that we have.
Thank you so much, sir. And talking about the Cold War, you started with the Cold War. So another question based on that. In the 21st century, and even since the end of the Cold War, US's unifocal approach has been to sanction Russia um, and to stop Russian threats by sanctions and as such. And it can be said that it's a throwback to its Cold War hangover. Is it responsible for Russia's security predicament and its subsequent alliance with China?
Well, since 2015, the United States had considered Russia and China as strategic challengers. And their national security strategy and QDR, quadrennial defense review, they have mentioned China and Russia as challenges to the United States. Um, and of course, President Putin wrote an article in the New York Times several years ago, suggesting to his exasperation of the United States sanctions in the past several decades, especially after the Crimean situation. But there is also the Russian initiatives. For example, the Estonian uh, cyber attacks took place, and the main suspect at the time was Russia. Uh, Secondly, there was the Georgia, Abkhazia, South Ossetia. These were also coming under the Russian military force. Then we have the Crimean situation, which also resulted in sanctions, and then currently now, which were retaliated with intensive sanctions from the United States, UK, and other European partners. German Chancellor, for instance, said that they would be unified and intensify the sanctions against Russia. In addition, of course, the energy supplies and others would be problematic in the near future. So there is the retaliation, counter retaliation. So that has actually led to the renewal of the Cold War between the Western countries and Russia. So this is a continuing stream that we saw in the recent times, and the impact is also seen since yesterday with the military forces in Ukraine.
Thank you, sir, for that answer. Has my next question is that has the US failed to notice that by constantly sanctioning Russia and pushing it towards China, It is creating a regional and international imbalance, keeping in mind that India's predicament to joining either blocs unilaterally, that India would not be able to join either of the blocs unilaterally, but US has still been pushing Russia towards China, creating a regional and international imbalance.
So your question had three elements. One is the continuing Cold War between China, between US and Russia. Second is Russia-China relations, and third is on Indian policy. So the first on the Cold War between US and Russia, which of course continued even after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the then Soviet Union, and the current effort of Russia to reunify many of these areas which the Soviet Union lost, or at the end of the Soviet Union's period. So what we now see is, of course, in 2001, Russia and China cobbled up a strategic cooperation partnership agreement, which is a 20-year agreement. And by 2021, they renewed this agreement. So Article 9 of this Sino-Russian strategic partnership agreement has some provisions which would suggest to a kind of alliance between Russia and China. The wording is such that they can convert this into an alliance, or as Putin mentioned 2 years ago, it is more than an alliance between Russia and China. So we have seen the Russian arms transfer to China increased in terms of their high-tech nature. For example, the Su-35, Su-30s, Su-27s, or even currently the S-400 missile defense systems. And there is also the RD-93 cryogenic engine for the space launches, etc. And then in addition to that, we also see the AL-31F turbofan engines, which were sold to China, and additional like the anti-submarine warfare helicopters, or upgradation of technologies of many of their main battle tanks or other equipment. The Chinese also bought the Sovereignty class of destroyers and the Kilo class submarines. In addition, of course, there is information about their submarine, nuclear submarine cooperation. So, in the background of this, what we have seen is while Russia used to sell high tech components to India, today China has been getting much of these in the recent times. Although China and Russia, or the Soviet Union, went to war in 1969, and Cold War also spilled over from 1960 till the Soviet disintegration in 1991, till Gorbachev's speech in Vladivostok in 1986. There was the bad blood between Russia and China, Soviet Union and China at that time. So this context is important for us because there was a Cold War between Russia, between Soviet Union and China. And currently, of course, they are strategic partners. The reason why I'm mentioning this is United States, during Nixon's visit to China, they have cooperated with China to jointly disintegrate the Soviet Union. Deng Xiaoping, for instance, went to the CIA offices and had collaborated with the United States and the CIA and the NATO related. They have jointly, in a way, disintegrated the then Soviet Union. So there are no saints here. Russia and China also had an enmity. Today, of course, they are planning to counter the United States. And so they have this multipolarity debate in which India is also a part in the Russia, India, China trilateral meetings, strategic triangle meetings. So in other words, It's a very complex issue between Russia and China, although today they want to counter the US unilateral policies as a part of this multipolarity. So we have seen Russia-China joint exercises and also a lot of other cooperation in the Security Council. For example, while China abstained when Crimea was annexed and was silent during the South Ossetia and Abkhazia attacks by Russia, today on January 31st, China supported Russia and its actions by saying that Russia has security interests in this region. So we have seen a lot of change in China's position vis-a-vis Russia. So this is what we currently have between Russia and China. You also had a third element in your question on India. For India, obviously, if it has to follow its national interests, the fundamental thing, of course, is it will look at which countries have supported India in the Security Council or on Kashmir issue. We find, for instance, a strange thing that Ukraine had supported the nuclear sanctions in the 1172 resolution in the Security Council when India tested nuclear weapons. Secondly, Ukraine has also been transferring a lot of arms, ground forces T-80 tanks, main battle tanks, or its parts to Pakistan. Thirdly, Ukraine also criticized India on Kashmir issue. So India's position on Ukraine, although currently very friendly, but there is also the issue of India's own national interests. Secondly, there is the issue of China as a part of the Russia-China coordination, because on February 4th, China-Russia joint statement just before the Olympics during the opening ceremony and so on, we have seen that they mentioned limitless cooperation between Russia and China. We do not know what exactly does that mean, but possibly they would enhance their coordination in political and diplomatic issues. So that would probably constrain India's role in terms of the Russia-China coordination. Number two. Number three, Russia, with the Russian actions in Ukraine, we may also possibly see China getting emboldened in terms of initiating another Galwan incident on the India-China border areas. So, because the situation in between Russia and Ukraine is a strong will do what it wants to, the weak will suffer, as some realist political philosophers said sometime several centuries ago, which means then that we have to be prepared for any Chinese adventurism on the India-China border areas. The third major impact of the situation currently in Russia-Ukraine relations will be on energy prices. As you know, we import 80% of our requirement, and in the last 1 week, the oil prices have increased by more than $5, from $94 per barrel to 99.4 dollars per barrel. It is expected to increase after the sanctions kick in. So this is going to be a big problem for India in terms of shelling out more on the energy bills.
Yes, sir, you are absolutely correct. Even the Indian basket, that what we import from the countries, that even their prices have increased by more than $10 since January, I guess. Because the webinar is on the Russia, China, and Pakistan axis, so we will also touch on Pakistan, the role of Pakistan that it can play. Imran Khan's trip to Moscow was preponed and scheduled ahead of his plans, and he became, I think, the first prime minister to meet Putin after Ukraine, after Russian troops moved into Ukraine. So, what are your thoughts on the emerging this Russia-China-Pakistan axis of what is commonly known as Troika, and what impact can it have on India's security issues and implications?
Well, I have no expertise on Pakistan, but I would like to say a few things here. Pakistan Prime Minister's visit to Moscow has been very, you can say, a near failure because of the situation that is evolving in terms of Russia-Ukraine relations. There is the itinerary that was proposed in the newspapers and others that has not been fulfilled. And he was left alone in the hotel to have breakfast on his own. And it appears that the visit was not really successful, number one. I think it is badly timed, and Pakistan Foreign Ministry and the Prime Minister's establishment may not have read the situation properly in the background of the Ukrainian situation. Generally, no foreign visits should be conducted during those crisis times when a country is going to war. For example, Foreign Minister Vajpayee cancelled his visit to or abruptly ended his visit to China when China was attacking Vietnam in 1979. So why Mr. Imran Khan had visited Moscow during the crisis situation is not known, and I think it is a big goof up on the Prime Minister's office in Islamabad. Second, of course, there is the Russia-Pakistan relations getting enhanced. There is the Russian effort to sell Mi-17 and other helicopters, and they have also given consent to China to transfer the AL-31F engined JF-17 aircraft sold by China to Pakistan. So they have provided consent to China for this to Pakistan. So that is a big shift in the Russian approach because we thought that Russia and India have a 21st century strategic partnership, but this will be denting into the India-Russia relations as Russia approaches or normalizes relations with Pakistan. Remember, Pakistani backed Mujahideen killed over 60,000 Soviet troops in Afghanistan. So it is quite strange for Russia to go and cooperate with Pakistan during the recent visit.
Well, thank you so much, sir. As I have been informed, you have to leave at 3:30. Therefore, I would like to call Anisha call to deliver the vote of thanks and for your time.
Thank you so much, Sohail. I hope I'm very good afternoon to all present here, and it is my esteemed privilege to official vote of thanks on behalf of Analytica. I initially propose a vote of thanks has enlightened our audience on this pressing issue at hand. It was a wonderful opportunity to hear from you, sir, and we look forward to a similar opportunity in near future as well. I will also take a moment to thank the organizing team and all the parties to understand this crisis and for the success. Thank you so much. And with the kind permission of our speaker, we would like to close today's session with the promise of reconnecting in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We may as well log out from this meeting. Thank you.